Alright guys, welcome to the honest review of the brand new Huawei P9. This is a fanboy free review, an honest review, an unbiased review of this brand new 5.2 inch flagship phone from the guys at Huawei. So we're going to jump right in and talk about the body and what we see with this phone. First thing you're going to notice is it looks a lot like an iPhone 6S, even down to the pentalobe screws here in the bottom. You can see those. We've got a reversible USB-C plug, which is nice to have, stereo headphone jack, as well as a speaker here on the bottom. We have a chamfered edge and an antenna line, so it's kind of a hybrid between the 5S series of phones and the 6 and 6S series of phones. But it does feel better in your hand than the iPhone, and because it's a little bit squared off with that chamfered edge and it's less round, it's actually easier to hold on to. The fit and the finish and the build quality is fantastic. I love the way this phone feels. 5.2 inch display. It is AMOLED. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But the fact that the phone is easy to use in one hand, and that it's got a premium metal build, and that it's thin and light and has a fingerprint sensor right there in the back, just makes this thing a joy to use. It's so easy to unlock. It's so easy to slip in and out of a pocket because it's so thin. It's just a really awesome phone in terms of the build and the feel in your hand. Other things about the body to talk about. One of the biggest things that jump out at you right away are these two lenses here on the back with this Leica badge. They've got a 2.2 aperture and an effective 27mm lens of both of these. And we'll talk about the camera a little bit later. We do also have a dual LED flash, a power button that has some ridges on it, volume rocker, micro SD removable storage, as well as a nano SIM slot here in the side. And overall, it's about everything else you've seen on any other phone. Other things to talk about are the screen edge is a little bit curved, and so you can kind of get the feel of an iPhone 6 there, you know, with that little bit of a curved edge screen. But it just feels better in your hand than an iPhone does. Again, I can't speak enough about how great this phone feels. We're going to talk more now about the screen. This is an AMOLED screen. It's a 5.2 inch screen. If you compare that to the Nexus 5X, which has an LCD screen, you can kind of see the difference here in terms of the color and the clarity and the blacks. Much nicer screen here on the Huawei P9 over the Nexus. Same thing goes over the iPhone. The iPhone uses an LCD screen as well. Really nice sharpness, really nice color accuracy on the Huawei. Great viewing angles, great white balance. Overall, the screen is fantastic. I love the screen in this phone. Absolutely can't get over the fact that finally a one-handed phone, kind of like an iPhone, but you know, it's Android. I prefer Android over iPhone. Has a great screen, kind of like the Galaxies, but doesn't have any of the Galaxy bloat and doesn't run iOS. So for me, this is a real treat to have. Now we'll get into kind of the software of the phone. We're going to talk a little bit about how fast it is. I have the Google launcher overlaid here on top of the Huawei skin. This gives me more of a Google stock Android experience. You know, I've got my Google Now over here. I've got my OK Google references here. And so it's a little bit nicer for me to use the Google Now launcher. But software runs fast, there's no lag, there's no sort of delay, apps open and close quickly. We'll compare it here to a Nexus 5X. This Nexus is running beta software, it's running the Android N beta release, and you can compare side by side how quickly things open up here on this phone. We'll open up Instagram here first just to get a look. About the same on each of these guys, right? We'll jump into another app here, let's run Google Maps. We'll see how quickly they both open up together. So let's go to there. Whoops. Yep, there we go. A little bit faster there on the P9. And now we'll close this and we'll open up another app here. Just as a little side-by-side speed test. We'll do Twitter. Open up Twitter on both of these. You can see the Huawei P9 a little bit faster there on that guy too. So you can get a sense of how quickly apps open and close on this. It's a nice and brand new phone. It has a newer chipset. I think it's called Kirit. It's not a Snapdragon. It's not an Exynos like you hear a lot of the common people talk about, or an A9 series like they talk about with the iPhone. So it's a little bit different than what you've heard of, but we're not going to get into the specs and gigahertz and all that crap because it doesn't matter. What matters is how fast the phone is in your hand and how the user experience feels. And the experience feels fast. It feels snappy. It feels good. No lag, no hiccups, no bloat. So all in all, great user experience. Other things to talk about are there are lots of cool little features with this skin on top of Android. If you're not familiar with Huawei, they have a number of neat settings inside their skin, and it doesn't feel overly heavy like Galaxies and TouchWiz do. It's a little bit more laid back, probably not as light as HTC nowadays or Motorola nowadays, especially not as light as stock Android, but it feels a lot like Sony, actually. If you've used a Sony Xperia Z phone, the sort of overlay feels a lot like that. There are just little tiny, things in here that are nice to have. What I'm talking about are stuff like, the power settings. You get like, super power, low power mode. You get all these other advanced settings that you might not see in some of the other phones. Huawei has its own suite of apps with the Huawei ID, smart assistance things with a floating dock and navigation bar and motion control. And, like I said, it's kind of like Sony. It's not as in your face as Samsung, but it's not as laid back as HTC or Motorola. But the point of that whole thing is that you can kind of hide things the way you want. You can customize things. See, like the little battery icon there with the percentage is customized. The little network speed indicator there is customized. So it's kind of nice. I like it. I like the Huawei user experience. I definitely do like stock Android better. Again, that's personal preference. But for me, the Huawei user experience isn't all that bad. Now we're going to talk more, or actually talk some, about the camera. One of the nicer things, or at least certainly one of the hyped up things and the great marketing things about the phone is the camera system it's got in it. If you're familiar with Leica makes really, really high-end imaging tools, most notably rangefinder cameras and rangefinder lenses. And anything that has a Leica name on it typically comes with a Leica price tag, and we're talking several $1,000s for Leica cameras and Leica lenses. And so this is not a cheap name, so it doesn't really come by, being this name doesn't carry the same sort of stature as like Sony or Fuji, or it's a Leica is a high end, not necessarily the best, but it's a very high end name. And what they've done with these two lenses, the point of them is that they're supposed to take a black and white photo with one and a color photo with the other, and then merge them for a better quality image. And what I'm going to tell you, and again, you're going to have to take my word for this and take it as this being an honest review, is that the image quality of these cameras together is good. It's not, I would not say it's excellent. I would say it's very good to good. I would compare it to the image quality of my Nexus 5X, and I would say that if you guys are a fan of my videos, you know that the 5X is probably one of my most beloved of phones. And I'm just going to take a little picture here. Off to camera left and just snap that of my little case, and we'll compare these pictures side by side, and you'll see that the Leica camera it's good to very good, if not great. And we'll take a side by side here, look at these two, and I'll show you guys kind of what my thoughts are. You can kind of see the color difference between the two, a little bit more saturated greens here on the Leica camera on the Huawei, probably a little bit sharper. You kind of look here at the get a grip sign, a little bit more better exposure there. So, if you, like I said, if you're a fan of my videos, you know that I really love the camera in the 5X. And I'm going to say the same thing about the Huawei camera. It's great. I do really, really like the camera quite a bit. It is one of the best cameras I've used yet. And another nice thing about it, if you've ever seen a Leica camera, you have aperture controls, and you have ISO controls and shutter speed controls, and it gives you a pro mode here down the bottom, which is awesome. It's really, really nice to have these features on a point and shoot cell phone camera. Really, really cool. It also gives you a whole suite of other things to do, like beauty mode and light painting, and there's some gimmicky stuff in here for sure. But in general, the camera's cool. In general, the camera takes really great photos. In general, the camera stands up to my test of my Nexus 5X in terms of the quality and the ease of use and focusing speed and stuff. And I, again, really, really like it. Is it worth buying this phone for the camera? No, it is not, because again, the Galaxy makes a great camera, the Nexus 5X and Nexus 6P have great cameras, and so there are alternative phones out there that have better cameras, or maybe even about similar cameras than this. So I think that this dual lens thing is a great sort of try. I'm really proud of Huawei for putting this in, and I love having something that's called Leica in my pocket, but I'm not convinced it's all that it's cracked up to be. I think that there's still room for improvement, and that it's not the equivalent of carrying a Leica rangefinder around your neck. Unfortunately, I wish it was, and maybe someday we'll get there, but it's not there yet. So getting more away from the hardware and the camera, and just getting into sort of the overall fit, finish, and feel of the phone, Guys, it's really, really tough for me. I love this Nexus 5X. It's my pride and joy. It's my bread and butter phone. And this Huawei is really, really close for me in terms of what I want in a phone. It's a one-handed phone. It has a great unibody feel to it. It has a great camera. It has a Leica badge. It has a fingerprint sensor. It has removable storage. But the one thing that's lacking, the one thing that kills me about this phone, actually two things, but we're going to start with the first, is that it doesn't run stock Android. And I'm sorry guys, but stock Android is huge to me, and I'll tell you why. This phone's running the new version of Android right now. It's running what's going to be Android 7 or 6 point something. It's Android N, so it's the next version of Android. Who knows when or even if this phone is going to get the next version of Android, okay? And that's a really, really big deal for me because I want the latest and greatest software. Software is what makes these phones great. I mean, don't get me wrong, hardware is good. But if Samsung is any sort of indicator of why that's important, Samsung has great hardware and typically has terrible software. TouchWiz, laggy, bloat, etc. So software is a really big part of that. And I really, really, really can't stress enough the fact that current updates and having an Android phone that's up to date is huge. And that's why I really, really like the Nexus 5X and also the Nexus 6P. But having a phone that you can easily get updates for and that costs a lot less than the competition, that's my second point there. The cost of the 5X right now is I think about $300-ish or whatever. The cost of the 6P is a little bit more than that. The cost of the 6P is in the $400 territory. I paid $549 for this guy right here. So this isn't exactly a cheap phone. It's definitely a premium phone. It's definitely demanding a premium price. But are you getting a premium experience over the Nexus line of phones or over any other Android phone for that matter? And I would argue that you're not. I'd argue that you're getting a very great phone and a very good phone at a decent price. You know, you're paying flagship prices and you're getting an excellent phone, but you're not getting an equivalent user experience in terms of software. You're getting Huawei software, which is okay and is usable for sure, and a lot of people probably like, myself included. But you're going to be lacking updates. You're going to be lacking certain core stock Android features. And so take that into consideration when you're considering the Huawei P9. Again, I like the phone. I like the camera. I love the build. I love the feel. I love the screen. I just can't get over the price and the lack of stock Android. So hope you guys enjoyed this little short, honest review here of the Huawei P9. Don't forget to check out everything else I have on YouTube and rate, comment, and subscribe. Thanks.